Chapter 8. Sunday late morning. As Doreen watched, Scott reached out a shaky hand and gingerly chose a book. "Oh, Nan," he said, and he flipped through the pages gently. "These are probably the most expensive items you have in this house." Doreen stopped, stared at him and the book he held, and asked, "What's a totemus?" "This book is a very expensive original by Totemus, an author from long ago," he said. "But again, it's not my field." This time, instead of taking a photo, he called somebody. "John, I have in my hands a first edition 1717 Totemus," and he spelled out the title and the author's name. There was an explosion of sound on the other end of the phone. "Yes, I'm at the same house where the grandmother spent her life buying antiques and stuffing them away for the granddaughter. We just walked into the pantry of the kitchen and raincoats are hanging on the edge of this bookshelf holding rare books," he said, and then he stopped and stared at the bookshelf and shook his head. "And it's a hell of a bookshelf itself. Looks like old cherry, but I can't even see it for all these books. However, the books are not in any temperature-controlled atmosphere," he said in a faint whisper. "They're just sitting here." As she watched, he added, "There's also a limited edition Ulysses." Then he read off the date. Doreen realized she hadn't even considered these books might have value. When Scott finally put away his phone, he said, "So this friend of mine is a dealer in specialized books. He said he would like very much to come and take a look. He consults for Christie's, but he also has his own private network of collectors." "When can he come?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning. He's taking the red-eye out of Toronto tonight." "It's really a big deal then, isn't it?" Scott smiled gently. "My dear, you have no idea how big a deal this is. I don't know how many of these books are valuable, but he wouldn't fly all the way here to see them for nothing." "Let's hope there is at least one worth money," she said with a happy sigh. Who would have thought Nan would hide so much money in this little run-down house? "Obviously, she didn't spend any on upkeep of the house," he said as he looked around and asked, "Is there an attic?" "Hopefully. I'm just wondering if you have more hidden rooms." "There is an attic. I have been up in it," she said, "but it was mostly empty. Just a few boxes of old clothing." "You may want to take a second look," he said. "And I would open every closet, every nook and cranny, and take everything out. That's the only way you'll know, particularly with John and me both here tomorrow." "Sheet music?" she asked. His frown was instant. "What do you mean?" "I just caught sight of it in that hutch underneath the printer," she said slowly. "It was a large folder, and I peeked in, and it looked like sheet music." He shrugged. "I have no clue. John might. I don't know." She walked over to the hutch and opened up the double doors underneath. On the bottom, where she had flipped through the paperwork, she pulled out the folder and noted its leather binding. "I think I need to contact Nan again," she said. Slowly, she held out the binder. He looked at her, then looked at the sheet music. "None of this means anything to me," he said, "but John might know." "Good enough," she said. "I'll visit with Nan again." "You do that," he said, "and tape the conversation so you don't miss anything." With that, he took off, promising to return the next morning at 9 with another truck. She was so stunned at the recent turn of events that she wasn't even sure what to do. But the fact was, one person had answers to this mess, and that was Nan. She called her grandmother. "Oh, there you are," Nan said. "I was wondering how you were doing." "Nan, did you know some of these books in the kitchen pantry might be valuable?" "Of course they are," Nan said. "I bought a whole pile of valuable stuff, thinking of you." That just boggled her mind. Some of these would have been purchased when Doreen was just a child. In her mind, she thought Nan had done this because she was afraid Doreen's marriage would break down, leaving Doreen destitute, and she'd been right, but all these items? "Yes, but Nan, this stuff is really valuable." "And that's fine. Although some of it I don't remember where I got it from, she said. Especially the books. I had some given to me as, and her voice lowered almost to that girlish tone again, special gifts. A couple men knew I was collecting pieces, and often gave things to me. Doreen just shook her head as she stared at the stuffed bookshelves. Not even really bookshelves but shelving. She wasn't sure where one piece ended and the next started, they were all so full. Oh my, how come I didn't even look at this corner, she wondered out loud. All this time I was looking for the provenance paperwork, and I never thought to look in here. That's because it's mostly recipes and junk, and you would have seen that much already. Besides, that's all boring stuff. I'm sure you'll sell it and make some nice money off it, Nan said as if she didn't have a care. Tell me more about this case. Do you remember a young girl being stolen from her bed at night? She asked. Crystal Dunham? Oh my, Nan said in a hushed whisper. That was very sad. What's the gossip on it? I think people thought it was more of a parental abduction. Until she didn't show up again. At that, Doreen sat down. You mean the parents were divorced? Yes, she said. And it was a fairly recent divorce. I believe it happened at the father's house, and his new girlfriend was living there when Crystal disappeared. I don't remember when they got married. It raised a lot of eyebrows at the time. Meaning he got married right after his daughter was kidnapped, and people didn't understand? Maybe, she said, or maybe it was the other way around. Do you know the stepmother? I don't know that I've ever met her, Nan said dryly. The stepmother was living in the same house when the girl was kidnapped, I believe, but you can't quote me on that. I think I heard the parents had separate houses across from each other, and the girl went back and forth. I just don't remember for sure. They only live a mile or so away from here. And she spouted off the street. I can't remember the number, but it's at the end of the road. A dead end too, I believe. Anybody living here now who may have more information on it? Doreen asked. Any family relatives? I don't know, Nan said. I'll have to ask around. Do that, Doreen said, adding, maybe this time we can solve the case before anybody dies. Nan chuckled at that. You do realize the case files from Penny's cold cases are still supposed to be coming to you from the journalist? They will probably help the police as they sort through this mess with Penny. I do wish she hadn't attacked you, Nan said crossly. That's hardly fair. You were only trying to help. And definitely not ladylike. I thought better of her. I used to be a lady, and I'm certainly not acting like a lady these days, Doreen said. And I don't imagine Penny gave a damn at that point, as she was thinking about finally having a few years of freedom herself. Yes, but to try to hurt you, that's just not acceptable, Nan said. Let's go back to the antiques. You need to tell me exactly what is in this house that is valuable, Doreen said abruptly. Scott and I were struggling as to what could be worth money here. I spent 50 years collecting, my dear. And yet, you said you collected this all for me, but I'm not even 36 yet, she said. Sure, but I collected before that, and then I would trade up and move things around. It was a fun hobby. And I figured that, if I ever needed money, I could sell it. The good news is, by the time you came along, I no longer needed money, but you did.